Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Monday, November the 4th. We are in a new month. This is the week of the election. And so, in honor of all those things, we changed the hold music over on Rumble that many of you heard to something a little more Western. Kind of that instinct that we have that we're going to be moving that direction. Also, I'll just go ahead and say it right up front. I blew it this morning. Maybe. I guess I blew it. I've got this little device here. I've loaded in so many clips that I had to go to a second page of them. And one of those buttons starts the stream, and I think we did so prematurely. So if you guys are seeing that before I get to edit it out, what you're seeing is I was resizing all the videos. It's what we do every single morning. It's just behind the scenes stuff you never see. For anyone making the accusation that this isn't a one-man show doing the things that we do, you don't get it. But that's okay. We're not mad at you. We welcome you anyhow. Let's get started today with a discussion about the culture of death. That is where we're going to be going. There are memes about a squirrel dead. That seems kind of ridiculous and unserious, but it is the moment that we live in. And maybe that is the final straw for the people that just haven't been paying attention, that the government, the federal government, the state government, even your local government has the potential to be a loveless, feelingless killing machine if it comes into your home. We'll talk about what that means and how broadly that can be explained out. This is a culture of death. And the Democrat Party has embraced it. It's something that Pope John Paul II talked about when I was a child. That there is a culture of death, and it is pervasive, and there is really one side of the aisle that has embraced it full hog. It's gross to watch. It's sad to see. And what we might see is that people who are not moved by the death of women like Laken Riley, who are not moved by the death of 1 million unborn children, maybe they're moved by the death of a squirrel. Wouldn't that be something? We're going to talk about all that stuff, including the inevitable thing that happens in life, which is that we will all evolve at some point and we will all change. We're going to talk about that today as well, because the Kyle Seraphin Show is going to evolve. Don't fear. If you haven't shared it with a friend yet, now is the time to do so. Find a friend and share it out there. Before we do, let's say thanks to our sponsors who continue to allow us to do the thing that we do here. Folks, here's the question. Do you think that the country is going in the right direction? My opening probably is my indication of where I feel about it. Does it feel like things are falling apart? If you're feeling alarmed, you are not alone. In fact, many Americans from all walks of life have taken action to prepare for whatever's coming next. That starts with having an emergency food supply. If you store food in your home, it is the right thing to do. We're living in crazy times. That's explaining why so many people around you are preparing. Why aren't you? Right now, you can get the 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Go to preparelikekyle.com to get it. It comes with delicious foods like creamy stroganoff. It comes with a honey wheat bread and a mushroom rice pilaf. It offers up to 2,000 calories per day on average. The food kit will last up to 25 years. You never know what this country's going to look like. Very Western, very likely. When that day comes, you'll be ready. Go to preparelikekyle.com. Preparelikekyle.com now to order your 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Go to preparelikekyle.com. We've done the same thing. I just actually organized my little storage container inside my house, and it has about 45 or 50 gallons of water that can go through my purifier. I've got big, sort of 3 and 5 gallon jugs that are all stacked up, and then we have a bunch of My Patriot Supply foods. You never know. You don't know. All right. Let's talk about the story first. The Associated Press is reporting it. An orphan squirrel who became a social media star was euthanized after being seized from a home. This is like a throwaway story in the local news, it turns out. It reminds me of these goofy little moments where you'll see a squirrel on water skis, right? I think actually they did that in Ron Burgundy, the Legend of Ron Burgundy, the Anchorman movies. A squirrel wearing a cowboy hat. It's silliness. A squirrel in water skis. A squirrel doing anything. It's sort of ridiculous. So how has that motivated and captured a bunch of people on social media? It was all of the rage. It was all of the talking and the twittering. By the way, I missed the fact that Elon Musk changed it from X to Twitter because twittering is really what it is. It's like a bunch of little birds chirping. But it also shows you a swell of where the public sentiment is. And it's not for women who have been murdered and brutally beaten and died before they were able to go out there and have children and have a family, that their futures were snatched away. That's not where it is. Although that happened, we've moved on from it. And now we're at this point, a little tiny cuddly squirrel. And so the story goes that a man rescued this little squirrel. Him and his wife found the squirrel on the ground, and it was like an infant that the mother had been run over by a car or killed or something. And he nursed it to health, and he raised it up, and he runs an animal sanctuary. And by all accounts, by looking at him, I'm guessing he at least leans towards the liberal sympathies, if not to the total left. He's covered in tattoos. His wife has neck tattoos, tattoos on her fingers. There are people on the right that do that, but less so. And he's a social media guy. And he doesn't seem overtly interested in politics. But he got a lesson in what happens when the government is out of control and serves only the government. And some leftist Karen who is embracing the sort of same ideology and the same thing that we saw so many Americans want to do during the COVID pandemic call-in lines. It's just a moment in time where you get to see people for what they are. And a woman called in and reported that he was living with an illegal animal that was hurting nobody. So I've got a little video montage of this creature, which doesn't seem like a problem. There is something that is not lost on me, because what we're going to end up with today is talking about masculinity, which is something I love to speak about, something that has to do with the why I think his story resonates so much. Because women look at this man who's kind to a tiny and meek creature, and they see the thing that they want in men, which is the ability to be strong, the ability to look virile, and then also that they are interested in being calm, caring, nurturing, that they can soften inside their own home, that they can show that in compassion for animals. It shows all the things that you would want in a mate, that somebody is willing to be able to raise children, and that they can have a hard exterior and a soft interior. So here's a little clip of this man. We'll get into his story a little bit more. But I want to show, this is just a musical montage. So if you're listening on the audio, what you're going to hear is a few seconds of music. It's nice. It's nice music. It's a nice way to breathe into your Monday morning or your Monday afternoon. Here we go. So there you go. It's a little taste of a rat with a bushy tail jumping around, hanging out in their home. Is that for me? Absolutely not. I think it's absurd. But it captured a lot of people's understanding, and it is a vehicle to express something that I think is much bigger and deeper, which is that there is a culture of death in this country, and that the political left have embraced it. They want it. They want it in war. They want it in tyrannical powers for the government, which includes killing anything from a squirrel to a grown man and a father. It includes sending our young children, who we think of as being young, but in past generations, they were old enough to go and do all kinds of things. We want to send 18 and 20-year-olds off to war. They're the ones pushing for this, whether it be the conflict in the Middle East or in Eastern Europe, or whether it's a failed ability to constrain Iran, whether it's the failed ability to keep China in check. All of these things have consequences. It's a culture of death. and it's really dark. This guy is probably not a great hero. The interesting thing is that his story, and I saw some of you guys saying he does OnlyFans with his wife. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know that. I don't watch OnlyFans. What I know is that he captured people's imagination with a squirrel. And if your government can't protect human beings, why would you think they would protect animals? The story goes like this. He raised this animal for 7 years, and somebody made a complaint. Supposedly the woman is a photojournalist, the classic sort of like liberal white lady, the people that Steve Friend refers to as the worst creatures in America. And they were apparently anonymous complaints, which is what they do when they don't want to expose somebody. And the State Department of Environmental Conservation, whatever the heck that is, in New York, in a place called Pine City, got a search warrant for an animal that wasn't causing any harm. A squirrel and a raccoon. The raccoon's name apparently was Fred. If this is what moves the needle, so be it. If that's what it takes for people on the left to open their eyes up and see that this government, all governments, are tyrannical and they must be contained. This belief that government is a solution in and of itself is absurd and crazy and scary. And it's what the Suspendables have been talking about from day one. There are a lot, an awful lot of examples of this stuff over the last couple years. It doesn't matter where you're looking at people like Mark Hout, who lived right across the state line, who had the FBI kick down his door and arrested him for being what? Pro-life. There is one thing that the culture of death hates, and it's people who embrace life. So anybody that speaks out against it is an enemy. And one of the things that life does is it allows you to have certain personal liberties, that you can take responsibility for your own actions. Firearms are a big part of that. That's why the ATF come in. It's why the FBI and the ATF have gunned down people in the last couple of years that didn't need to die. It doesn't mean that those killings were not justifiable under the current positions, but when you choose your tactics, you also often choose the outcome. And we've seen that. We talked about it with my dad the other day. If you're paying attention, what you're seeing is an overreach. The government is not serving the people. It's serving its own interest. And when that happens, squirrels, babies, young men, old men, some women will die because that's what they're about. Here's the TMZ interview of this. Like I said, these people don't look like they're going to be cut from the ilk of Kyle Seraphin. They're not going to be they're not going to be the kind of people that I see at Sunday Mass, most likely, but that doesn't mean they're bad people. And most importantly, it is an opportunity for people who even look like this, who think the way that they do, that live in New York and run an animal sanctuary. Like I said, most likely, just based on the superficial information, I would imagine that they're on the left. What a rude awakening to find your door kicked in over a squirrel.
We just learned that they have euthanized Peanut.
And the raccoon as well.
And the raccoon as well. I am so sorry. This must be really difficult for you.
It not only tears my family apart, but Peanut was the cornerstone of our nonprofit animal rescue. And 10 to 12 DEC officers raided my house as if I was a drug dealer. I was sat outside my house for 5 hours. I had to get a police escort to my bathroom. I wasn't even allowed to feed my rescue horses breakfast or lunch. I was sat there like a criminal after they interrogated my wife to check out her immigration status, then proceeded to ask me if I had cameras in my house, then proceeded to go through every cabinet, nook, and cranny of my house for a squirrel and a raccoon.
They got a search warrant?
They got a search warrant. 4 departments and a judge signed off on a search warrant for a squirrel and a raccoon. And then they took them and killed them.
Why did they go through all that to get a search warrant for an animal that had been with you very safely, and the world witnessed this for 7 years? Why now suddenly did they show up with a search warrant and take these animals?
We haven't a clue. We don't know who made the complaints. Again, Peanut was an indoor squirrel, not harming anybody. He's been with us for 7 years. Not a single complaint was ever filed for this animal. We had him for 7.5 years. He became the world's most famous squirrel. We weren't hiding him by any means. He was all over TikTok. He became the first squirrel on TikTok to ever hit 1 million followers. He did every news station around the world. He's helped people. He's helped kids gather joy. And then we started a nonprofit animal rescue called Peanut's Freedom Farm to help animals like Peanut fight a good fight when they're in a neglected case or they're sitting in a slaughter auction.
Welcome to the party, man. It feels kind of like that moment in the movie Die Hard where Bruce Willis is looking out of the glass because he's just kicked out a desk, right? And he's just throwing things out the window. And the people on the ground suddenly realize that Nakatomi Plaza has been captured by terrorists. And what does he say? He leans over there. He's got the MP5 hanging around his neck, and he says, "Welcome to the party, pal." Like, nobody wants to be part of the party, but we're in the party right now. The party is that something has happened, and we say that euphemistically. We say that as sort of like a sarcastic remark. Our country's been captured by people who lie, who have told you that the most important thing that is going on the ballot right now, there's an entire party, a Democrat party, that is insisting that the most important thing we can do is send more money to Ukraine, that we can kill off more babies and let more people into this country illegally, despite the fact that there's evidence that the people that are here, some of them, doesn't have to be all of them, doesn't even have to be most of them, but a sizable number of them, even if it's a small percentage of them, engage in some of the worst and horrific antisocial behaviors, including murder and rape and so on. Welcome to the party. You shouldn't have to become a victim to realize it. And if it takes a squirrel to turn the minds of some people, so be it. Speaking of Ukraine, there's something really disgusting happening. This is also the focus on wanting to get into the abortion discussion, because I do want to get into that today too. Because apparently that's what women care about, and I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think it makes any sense. But if they're getting bad information from TV commercials like the Harris campaign is running, perhaps that's how they get there. How about this? This is Eugene Vindman. He's running for Congress. He's in Virginia's 7th district. They have this problem because you can't actually operate in honesty and also support the culture of death. The culture of death requires you to lie. Sounds like somebody, the father of lies, does it not? So Vindman here is quibbling with a TV anchor about rank, and he just won't come out and say it in the same way that you've heard Tim Walz quibble about rank. Why is that? It's because tyrants, particularly petty tyrants, they always want titles. They want accolades and they want awards, especially when they didn't earn them. This man didn't retire as an 06 full bird colonel, as we would say. He retired as an 05. And she's just trying to get him to say that. Unfortunately, so many people in our media don't have that experience and don't know how to go and ask for it. The question should never be, are you a colonel? Because he's going to just keep insisting that people can call me colonel, which is true. Anybody who understands customs and courtesies in the military knows this. If she had just said, did you retire with the rank of 05 or 06? And let him quibble about it, then you would show him even more. But here you go. Here's a little taste of Vindman. And his whole point is that there's the most important things we need to be doing is focusing on things like abortion. That's what the voters care about. If that's what the voters care about, we are a fallen nation. And I think that has been proven true, whether it be because they're killing squirrels, whether they're killing 1 million babies a year, which they are, or whether they're arguing that heartbeat bans actually kill women, which is what CNN led with today. There were 2 stories that they reproduced from ProPublica. I'm not going to get into them because they're foolish and they're absurd. But the point of it is that women are going to die. You remember the people will die thing we used to play with Elizabeth Warren? That's where we're at right now.
To clarify, did you retire at the rank of lieutenant colonel? Yes or no?
I'm a retired colonel. And
but there's
any
a difference
embellishments.
there's a difference in rank there. So just help me clarify and help me understand, right? So did you retire officially as at the rank of lieutenant colonel, even though you hadn't yet hit the requirement for colonel?
So Simone, again, my opponent is lying about my record, just like he lied about his fake family. I'm entitled to be called colonel. And that's all there is to it.
Okay, what about, as you touched on, you're a decorated veteran. You have a distinguished career. That's not up for debate. But to clarify again, your opponent is attacking your combat record. Did you fight in combat?
Well, my answer to that is I deployed to Iraq, a combat zone, and I'm proud of my record. I received hostile fire pay. My opponent, once again, is lying about my record, just like he lied about his fake family, to distract from the real issues in this race. What voters care about, what they care about is high prices, inflation. They care about abortion, restoring access to abortion care. And those are the important issues in this race.
So when you posted on Twitter February 10th, quote, "I'm running for Congress because democracy is on the line. I fought for our nation in combat." Yes or no, you fought for the nation in combat?
I stand by what I said, and I stand by my military service record.
Okay, let's move along. In terms
It shouldn't be that hard. He did pose with somebody else's family. It is a weird picture if you guys haven't seen this. This is Derek Anderson. He's also was a Green Beret. There's something different about being a Green Beret versus being exposed and paid hostile fire pay. Look, I say that as somebody who didn't deploy, who served in the military and didn't get a chance to do that because that was my mission set. That was the goal I looked into. God always has a different plan than what we think. So I'm not going to demean his service per se. What I will demean is his ability to be simple and honest about it. Why do we have to try to shade this thing and try to claim some sort of valor that doesn't exist? There's a dramatic difference between people who served in actual combat and people who deployed to combat zones but were not exposed directly to combat and people who didn't. And from the outside, from someone who stayed home in the United States and only spent time on military bases, I get it. Both of those people went further than I did in places that are dangerous. But there's a dramatic difference from people like my buddy Garrett O'Boyle, who has the combat infantry badge, which says that he directly faced and engaged in ground combat against our nation's enemies, and guys that were military officers hanging out somewhere on a base, walking around, collecting hostile fire pay. It's not the same animal, and I don't know why we have to act like it is. Lies and the culture of death go hand in hand. That seems to be very obvious to me. And that's perhaps why we're going to have this sort of uncomfortable truth. This is the thing that Elon Musk and Twitter and free speech have been on the ballot this time. They're actually out there making the argument that you should be able to at least express yourself and push back against these narrative lies. I'm going to touch back on the squirrel for a second. Elon Musk said the government is a mindless and heartless killing machine. The question that he was being asked was, how did they do this? How did 4 different governmental agencies go out there and get a search warrant and a judge signed off on it? And that's exactly it. The government has no love. It is not people. It is simply a vehicle that is supposed to promote our good, and it is no longer doing so. And that's how you end up with the story out of the New York Post today, written by Miranda Devine. Good on her for doing this coverage. It says the good FBI agents have endorsed Donald Trump because the agency is contaminated by political bias. I want to read it's a very short article, so I'll just touch on a couple pieces here. It's almost like something that I started saying in May of 2022 when I sat with James O'Keefe. The fact that they muffled my voice and covered my face is not withstanding. The points that I've been making have been true for well over 2 years at this point, particularly about the FBI. But the FBI is just a figurehead for a broader government that is a mindless and dangerous, heartless killing machine. It can kill you because it has the authority to do so. And if it is not doing so in service to our liberties, then it is a real problem. And we have been sounding the alarm talking about it being a problem. She says, this is Miranda Devine writing, good FBI agents who want to end the weaponized system of justice have endorsed Donald Trump as the only hope for reforming the Bureau. I actually do believe this. I rarely believe in things that are so hyperbolic. But there is no other way. If given 4 more years, the FBI will basically be beyond repair, and the people that are in there that are decent will be run out. My friends and I have been talking about it in the past. The question for us is, after November, as this month progresses, what are the probability of government agents popping up at our door, whether it be Child Protective Services, whether it be a federal search warrant of some kind for some nonsensical thing? When you're no longer serving purposes of justice, that becomes really a serious problem. The group is called the National Alliance of Retired and Active Duty Special Agents and Analysts of the FBI. I have never heard of this organization. Good for them for coming together and creating something like that, because the alternative is this what's called the Society of FBI Agents or former FBI agents, and they're terrible. They're a left-wing mouthpiece. They said that the public safety and the national security issues are both at stake. That's all true. The FBI and DOJ have been, quote, contaminated by political bias, inspired by unchecked and partisan ideology. This is all also accurate. They believe Donald Trump is the only candidate from any political party who's displayed the independence, the courage, and the necessary championship for a hard reset of the FBI. Well, that's a nice way of saying it. I would like to shut the damn thing down because I don't think people are going to trust it, even under a Donald Trump. The answer should be that it is dramatically reduced and its authorities are taken away because it has proven itself unworthy of these things. And you guys in the chat are saying similar things at this moment. It is a truly troubling thing for an agency to use its power in weaponized fashion against one side of the political aisle, and they are doing so in promotion of a culture of death. We know this because the Civil Rights Division, which should be out there with a good idea of making sure that Americans are not discriminated against, is doing one thing and one thing only. It is going after pro-life people, and it is trying to claim that conservatives are the real problem, that they are somehow suppressing the vote in 2024 America. Actually, you know what? I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to share this with you guys because I actually got something the other day that I thought was absolutely mind-blowing. I got a text message. I'm still registered to vote in California, despite the fact that I don't want to be registered, and I haven't lived there since 2009. I enlisted in June of 2009, and left California for good. I got this text message. Hey, Kyle, it's Colleen. With the Color of Change Political Action Committee, Election Day is Tuesday, November the 5th, and we're proud to support George Gascon for re-election as Los Angeles County District Attorney. Can we count on your vote for George Gascon this Tuesday? Stop to opt out. And I wrote back, you know what? I'm conflicted. Colleen, what is Color of Change? I just want to show you. I'm just reading it right from my phone, okay? Color of Change, PAC, is focused on building independent Black political power, amplifying Black voices, and electing progressive candidates who share our values. By the way, I'm sure they're also pro-abortion, and they want to kill babies, so isn't that something? And mostly Black babies when they're at it. I said, I don't know what independent Black political power is, but that sounds un-American. I guess I'll vote for the candidate who's on the other side, which is a guy named Hochman. Nonpartisan candidate. She writes back, obviously this is like bot-like, or this is groupthink, but she wrote, I would encourage you to visit the website and learn more about Color of Change and the PAC. The organization is focused on civil rights advocacy. It doesn't get more American than that. Now, the crazy thing is that when Democrats say things like civil rights advocacy, they are not talking about making sure there is equality between people and that they have an equal opportunity. That's not what they're interested in. And we keep saying that. I said, which civil rights don't Black people have in 2024, especially in Los Angeles County? I love trolling these people because I just ask simple questions. And then I got her to expose that this is complete nonsense. She wrote, under the current DA, Jackie Lacey, Black people are 13 times more likely to be incarcerated than white people, despite being only 9% of the county's population. The district attorneys have the power to decide who gets prosecuted and the severity of each prosecution, and that's why voting in this upcoming DA election is crucial. My questions went unanswered after this. This is when we shut them down. Number one. Well, I'll leave the reveal for the end because it's funny. But remember, the current DA is Jackie Lacey, except that it's not Jackie Lacey. They're trying to get George Gascon, who is the Soros-backed prosecutor in Los Angeles County, seeking re-election. He's the incumbent. I don't know how they got this wrong. This must have come from last year's talking points. I said, do the Black people commit 13 times more crimes? Or is the allegation that white people commit crimes that go unprosecuted? Your statistic seems incomplete. Also, Colleen, help me. Jackie Lacey left office in 2020. And she's a Black female. Are you actually claiming that a Black female DA was racist and unfairly targeting Black men? Is this the official position of the what is it called? The Color for Change Political Action Committee. That was when they went dark on me. I guess they realized that they weren't going to be converting my vote. Of course, I won't be voting in Los Angeles because I don't live in Los Angeles, and I haven't for 15 years. That doesn't keep me from being on the rotable. Do you really think that we're going to get something fair going out of there? But while we're talking about places like California, while we're talking about Los Angeles, which is one place I lived, I also used to live in the Bay Area. I was actually born in the Bay Area. Some of you probably don't know that. I was born in a hospital in Berkeley. My father used to be a news director at a big radio station there. And I grew up around the news business and seeing news people and people covering it. And let's just show how Oakland is going. Now, Oakland has always been the place that has been lower income. It's always been the place where it was kind of more hood, more ghetto, more difficult times, people that were more working class. It's where the docks are. It's where there's a big port as well. It's where there was always more crime. But I've never seen it like this. This is a guy in a MAGA hat from San Francisco deciding to check in on his neighbors over in Oakland and walking through it. And the video here is actually worth seeing. It's staggering. I'll put it up on the Locals channel. If you guys follow us on Locals at kylesarafin.com, you can go see it. This is as bad as anything you'll see in Haiti, in the third world, after the earthquakes. It's unbelievable that these are American cities. And there is an awful lot of money in the Bay Area. And I guarantee you these properties are worth an absolute fortune because if anybody wanted to develop them. But who's going to develop or build things in California right now? There's a reason why Elon Musk is leaving those places and abandoned them. And so are other businesses that have any sense because the policies are demonstrably awful. And the person who was in the attorney general seat in California and a former senator from California is running for president right now, if you don't think as California goes, the world goes, it certainly is the case when they are the ones in political office and you put people from California in office. California used to be a gem. And it turned out that there was a California governor that actually made this country pull back from the brink. His name was Ronald Reagan. I've got some clips from him as well. So before we get too deep into it, here's a taste of like what the culture of death looks like in Oakland, California.
Good morning, America. We are here in Kamalaville. As you can see, our community has become uninhabitable. Of course, I live in San Francisco. This is Oakland, California. I'm just checking up on my neighbors this morning to see how things are going. Obviously, this is absolutely horrible. This is the direct result of electing corrupt far-left Democrats who have enabled chaos and death for financial gain via corrupt nonprofits and corrupt organizations who have benefited from the suffering of the less fortunate on the streets. Thousands upon thousands of innocent Americans have died from fentanyl in the last few years alone. Fentanyl is a form of chemical warfare on the American people. It comes from China across the southern border and into our communities across the country. I wish I could say that this was just a San Francisco, Oakland problem, but unfortunately, Los Angeles looks like this, Portland looks like this, Seattle looks like this, Detroit looks like this, Denver looks like this, Tulsa looks like this, Honolulu looks like this, Anchorage looks like this, New York City looks like this.
You get the picture, is exactly right. That's shocking footage, by the way. It looks worse than the places in Mexico that I used to see in Ciudad Juarez when I would drive down to El Paso and I lived near the border. It's like the poorest colonias you might see in Mexico. And I'm sure it's just as bad as any place. It looks like a hurricane hit and wiped out a beach. And he's just walking on a roadway. There's no grass. There's nothing but dirt. There are destroyed structures that are just being occupied by homeless people. No pride and ownership. Where's that thing that Kamala Harris talked about? Which leads me to this story. She's avoid weighing in on California's tough on crime measure, Proposition 36. It turns out Californians are probably sick of some of the stuff. And one of the propositions on there would stiffen the criminal sentences for drug and theft crimes, retail crimes. You know, the things that actually affect people's everyday life. Whether you like drugs, whether you think they should be legal in a libertarian sense, the fact of the matter is they're illegal. And the thing that is the problem is when you have things that are illegal and the government also refuses to actually hold people accountable for that. People who traffic in drugs would also traffic in other illegal things. There's a lot of money if you're willing to take on that risk. And people that get involved with drugs, that are in the dealing end of it, that are in the business end of drugs, are also willing to break other laws. Usually they're violent. There's a common expression in law enforcement. If you find drugs, you'll find a gun. That's very, very much assumed at this point. My buddy actually told me he once arrested a gangbanger in California, outside the Bay Area, who covered, I can't remember what the order of operations was, but he either covered his fentanyl with an AK-47 or he covered the AK-47 with a bag of pills. But either way, drugs and guns tend to go together, and they seem so interested in it. So the question then becomes, Kamala Harris, how did you vote on this matter? How did you respond to this ballot matter, Proposition 36? You're running as a tough prosecutor. The problem is that she's also running away from her own record. Again, lies go hand in hand in the culture of death. So she doesn't want to answer this. Here's her being questioned. And a woman who is running for political office, the highest political office in the land, doesn't want to take a position on something where she is an actual voter in the state that she has a residence in. It's beyond understanding that she's allowed to do this. And it's utterly unserious, unless you're okay with lies.
Madam Vice President, have you returned the ballot to California, and how did you vote on Prop 36?
So my ballot is on its way to California, and I'm going to trust the system that it will arrive there. And I am not going to talk about the vote on that because, honestly, it's the Sunday before the election, and I don't intend to create an endorsement one way or another around it.
Okay, she doesn't want to affect the endorsement of this proposition because she doesn't want to say what she voted, because that would mean she would have to theoretically alienate people that think we should be soft on crime. Interesting, isn't it? Isn't it always fun when that happens? By the way, here's what it says. Prop 36, this is the article coming from The Guardian, would see people who fail to complete drug treatment in jail, increase punishments for some theft and some drug crimes, including turning some misdemeanors into felonies, and requires the court to warn people who are convicted of selling or provided illegal drugs to others that they can be charged with murder if they keep doing so and someone dies. That's not something that is just limited to the state, by the way. If you kill someone using drugs and you are involved in a drug organization, the federal government can charge you with a RICO murder. I've seen it done. I've watched MS-13 guys capture that. I've participated in arrests of people who were felons previously, who were convicted of murder previously, second-degree murder in Washington, D.C. By the way, he had a job with the Washington, D.C. government. That's another shocking story. You guys can go back in the archives and find it. But then he was brought up on RICO murder charges because the drugs that they sold, in this case it was specifically fentanyl, resulted in the death of a college girl. And it did take that to shake people out before they were okay with it. Because, of course, he was part of the protected class. He was a black man living in Washington, D.C. And I do think that comes into play, which is unfortunate and disgusting. But this sort of culture of lies, it's ongoing, and it's been so prevalent in this election, it's shocking. Here's CNN doing unexpected journalism. I've seen this massive shift on CNN, for whatever it's worth. Let me just go to the full screen for a second. They've shifted. Their print is far left at this point. It's a ridiculous leftist sort of mouthpiece. What you'll see right now is they'll say Americans have a choice between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And Kamala Harris is looking upward and hopeful. And Donald Trump is looking downward and glowering. It's just so overtly the case. They had multiple articles today about abortion, like it's front and center, like it should be the thing, when in fact, Americans have told us that the economy is the single biggest issue. Abortion is like issue number 10. I don't know who it affects, but it doesn't affect people in the same way. The economy, job placements, and so on. And the idea that we might go to war should be the most important thing on young people's minds. So they've been covering it falsely. But when it comes to the actual television, the broadcast version of CNN, they're bucking for ratings and they're trying to be actually a lot more fair. Here they are doing this unexpected journalism, calling out the lies of her campaign, where they're running ads targeting Jews in Pennsylvania, which is a swing state, and Arabs or Muslim people in Michigan. And they're telling dramatically different messages. Check this out.
Tonight, mixed messages. A K-file investigation this hour finds Kamala Harris is targeting crucial battleground voters with vastly different messages on Gaza and Israel. This ad is running in Michigan, which has the largest Arab population in America.
What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
All right, well, it's a very different story for an ad in Pennsylvania targeting Jewish voters.
Let me be clear. I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7.
Different message. Andrew Kaczynski is out front now. So, Andrew, those obviously do sound starkly different, to say the least. Tell me more about what you found.
Yeah, that's right. And look, this really illustrates the sort of fine line that the Harris campaign is trying to walk here in the closing weeks, closing days of this campaign on the issue of Israel. Here you have two entirely different constituencies, and they are getting two entirely different messages. There are often times these constituencies have very opposing views on this. If you are a Jewish person in Pennsylvania, you saw that ad that you're getting. You are getting that ad that talks about how strong she is in Israel. If you're a Muslim voter in Michigan, you are getting that ad on Facebook that's talking about how she won't be silent.
She won't be silent on the issue of Gaza. The short way of saying that is that they're lying. They're trying to thread a needle that you can't be on both sides of the conflict. Unless you just say that I'm America only and I don't care about foreign conflicts and the United States is only going to pursue the U.S. interests. That's one way to do it. They can't do that. They refuse to do that because dishonesty is the stock and trade that is going on here. In more dishonest news, they've tried to push out this idea that somehow Donald Trump threatened Liz Cheney with a firing squad. And it's all over the place. This is a Reuters piece. An Arizona prosecutor allegedly, this is one of their DAs, is investigating Trump for saying Cheney should face gunfire. It's absurd. I've got 3 clips. One of them is someone pandering to her. Another one is Marco Rubio destroying it. And lastly is someone who kind of sits in the middle ground, which is ridiculous. It's Bill Maher talking about, why are you doing this? There are things that they don't like about Trump on the left. But if you have to be dishonest, it kind of indicates that you don't have a very strong case to prosecute. So let's just hear Liz Cheney and this sort of fluff piece on CBS. I think CBS has picked up the mantle that CNN used to have of being the hardest, stupidest left that's sort of in the center position. They've leaned and tipped into it. And they're doing advocacy work on behalf of one campaign. It's pretty obvious that that also happened with SNL. So there's some other people that are doing the same kind of thing. I'm not going to touch on that because I don't want to play it, but there's some very funny clips coming out of SNL talking about how little people on the left actually are educated about their own thoughts. Maybe we'll throw that up on the Locals channel. Maybe we'll cover it tomorrow. Here's Liz Cheney being asked this fluff question. She's actually really terrible at asking or answering questions. It takes her a full 6 seconds to start doing the verbal pauses before she can actually get to any answer. And her answer is like, oh, of course, Kamala's going to win. Ugh.
Given how outspoken you have been, are you concerned about your personal security if Donald Trump wins this election, as he well may do?
Look, first of all, I am very confident that Vice President Harris is going to win this election. It's what we're seeing all across the country, the kind of absolutely unprecedented coalition that's coming together to support her. We're all going to run through the tape, and nobody is overconfident here, but I do believe she's going to be the next president of the United States. And I think that Donald Trump has ushered violence into our politics in a way that we haven't seen before. Any violence is unacceptable. Certainly the assassination attempt on the former president was completely unacceptable, and obviously should never have happened. But when you have a situation where, Donald Trump suggests that people who disagree with him ought to be put before military tribunals, that the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff should be hanged for treason, and his running mate, doubles down on it, I think that tells you that you're dealing with a man who doesn't have any conscience, and the people who worked most closely with him know that. And
what? Did she just blame the victim? Whenever somebody says something and then they say, but, what are they doing? They're actually negating the beginning of the sentence. Like, it was unconscionable that someone tried to kill Donald Trump, but, he's a terrible, bad guy, and he kind of does bring it on himself, doesn't he? That was her claim. That's what she just said. We should not have political violence except the ones that, do, and when it's their own fault that someone wants to kill them because the rhetoric has been so insane on the political left. Totally nuts. They're trying to make something that's not real happen here. Marco Rubio dispels it. Same exact program. Thankfully, they actually covered both sides of this. Quite interesting. I can't handle how bad Liz Cheney is at this gaslight. It's not effective to most people. But if that's what you want to hear, that's the only thing you'll hear. And then you'll hear Marco Rubio and you'll be like, oh, this guy's a liar. Because that's the way that they're programmed to hear it. If you only want to hear lies, then you can find them and they will affirm your bias. And they continue to do so. Except if you're even halfway towards the middle, if you're actually fairly looking at it at all, people like Bill Maher are going to wake up and they're going to be disgusted by it because they don't need this fake nonsense. They already dislike Donald Trump, and maybe it's about policy, and that's fine. I think they're also delusional. But geez, Louise, at least there's someone pushing back. So here's the opportunity for people that are listening to this hard left version of CBS kind of getting a pushback. Marco Rubio is kind of an imperfect vessel too, isn't he? He's not particularly masculine. He's not particularly tough, but at least he says the right thing here.
Well, in terms of safety and security, that soundbite a moment ago from Donald Trump talking about training guns on the face of Liz Cheney. The Trump campaign says that was about foreign policy. Well, we just played it for our viewers and listeners who heard it. Isn't it possible to make the case without using rhetoric like that?
But Donald Trump doesn't talk like someone who's been in Washington for 30 years. He doesn't
training
say
guns
it the way
on
I
her
would have said
face?
it. No, but that's not what he said, Margaret. You guys know that. Come on. I mean, everybody knows exactly what he was saying. What he was saying is, you're so much in favor of war. Yeah, you played a piece of the soundbite, because in another piece of it, he said he would give her a gun to go stand in conflict as well. You don't normally give a gun to someone that's going to be facing a firing squad, which is what much of the media made it sound like. The point he was making is not a new point. It is a point that has been made by people in both parties for decades, and that is, you're all for war, and it's easy to be for war when you're in some fancy building and you're safe and sound in Washington, D.C. Let's see how much you are for war when you yourself get deployed into combat. That's the point that he was making. That he uses language that maybe is not what we typically hear from someone that works at a think tank. Oh, fine. But I think it's truly not just unfair, it's egregious to see that reported the way that it was, along with other things that are out there. I've never seen such a concerted effort. Look, I've always believed there's bias because no one's unbiased, but I've never seen such a concerted effort like what I've seen, especially in the last 2 weeks, among multiple media outlets in this country, to, in some cases, breathlessly distort and lie about what's being said and to create and manufacture these gotcha moments against Donald Trump. I've never seen it before.
It's not just over the top. It's absolutely insane. Remember, that started off with a little segment where CBS, the anchor woman there said, "Are you worried about the government coming for you?" And it takes us right to the beginning of where we started here today. The government came for a flippin' squirrel in New York. And New York and California are the leftist fantasy versions of what they would run across this entire country. I'm sure of it. They are the blueprint. And what they will do there, what they can accomplish in New York and California can't be accomplished in other states at this moment, unless you start giving the federal government its full and unfettered powers. Hence, FBI agents saying that there's a real problem here. And we cannot do the same thing to the FBI nationwide. That's what I think. Bill Maher's not buying it. It's really, really a weird timeline to find that Bill Maher is a voice of sanity for people on the left. Because he is. I mean, he's snarky, he's sarcastic, but he's not wrong. Listen to this. He just debunks it right now.
I woke up today to the headline that Trump had called for a firing squad for Liz Cheney. And this is what I really don't like about the media. No, he didn't. He did not. You don't have to move me to not like Donald Trump.
He says
more
so
than
many
I
shitty
already,
things. Why do you have to do that?
And by the way,
Yeah.
if you don't realize it, well, here's what he said. He's criticizing him for being a war hawk. I mean, she is Dick Cheney's daughter. He said, she's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay. Let's see how she feels about it. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, we'll send tens of thousands of troops right into the mouth of the enemy. Now, of course, he expresses himself horribly. He has to add, she's a stupid person because he's a moron.
Trump knows what it's really like from Vietnam.
Okay. But just to be clear, this is exactly what hippies always said. This is exactly what peaceniks always said. This is Fortunate Son, the song. It's like, you know what? It's very easy to sit in your building and send young men to die, apropos of Ukraine. Yes. Because, I don't know, that war doesn't look like it's going in the right direction. Not at all, no. But just so, you know, just don't lie to me. I don't like Donald Trump. Don't lie to me and tell me he wants in front of a firing squad. He was...
That was Jamie Raskin, by the way, bringing up his Vietnam record. Jamie Raskin, who was educated at Harvard, who has been a professionally useless person for his whole life, that wore a do-rag to associate himself with the Crips or the Bloods or whatever the heck he was doing while he was like running around with cancer, who went to Georgetown Day School, who's been a polished and privileged person who lived every bit a privileged life as much as Donald Trump. He's just less successful at it. Unbelievable. That was that little inject that you heard right there. But it is a hippie idea. It is an American idea that, like, don't make me go fight a war for you if you're not willing to step up and do it. Isn't that something? And then they act like they hate the troops in reality because they actually hate people who do the work of the troops. The difference is go out there and talk to people in the military who are enlisted, who are going to go do the work of fighting. Go find people that are involved in combat operations and tell me how many of them are in fact raging liberals that love a Jamie Raskin and think that Kamala Harris is their best choice. They don't associate with them all. They're trying to make these people into something they're not. Here's Obama talking about how Tim Walz is just a regular dude and he could work on an antique car, and that Trump, He does this weird thing about Trump having a butler named Jeeves. Apparently, Obama has left into fantasy world. Has Barack Obama ever changed a tire, do you think? And I don't mean that like as a euphemism for some sort of like homosexual behavior. I mean, has he ever actually like gotten down and used a jack and popped up a tire and pulled off the lug nuts and then put on a new tire and then properly tensioned them back on? Has he ever done that? Most of you probably have. Most of the women in my audience probably have been able to do that. It's actually not that difficult. I don't think Barack Obama has ever had calluses on his hand from doing anything physical, ever. Unless it involved lotion. Can we say that? We can say whatever we want. It's my channel.
And by the way, she'll have an outstanding partner in Governor Tim Walz. I love that dude. He is a veteran. He's a teacher. He's a coach. He was a great governor. Turns out he can even take a vintage truck apart and put it back together again. You think Donald Trump can do that? Do you think Donald Trump has ever changed a tire in his life? If he gets a flat tire, he calls his chauffeur, Jeeves. Jeeves, change that tire. I don't know if his chauffeur is actually named Jeeves, but I like to think it's Jeeves. The point is, if you elect Kamala and Tim, they know something about your life.
No, they don't. That's pretty obvious. That's why there's no laugh line on the G's thing. Everybody in the crowd's going like, where are you going with this, man? Have you really lost your touch? Are you really trying to push a Tim Walz on us? It doesn't fly. It's not good. It's terrible, actually. It's a really, really weak push. You know how weak it is? It's this week. Rashida Tlaib, Democrat-Hamas, is unable to endorse Kamala Harris at a Michigan rally. Why? Because she doesn't want to lose. She actually knows that people that are Arab are going like, you know what, we're pretty conservative. I mean, we may not have the same sort of Judeo-Christian beliefs that other people do in this country, but we don't want them transing our kids. We think the economy is important, and things are not going well. This is covered by the New York Post. They don't want it. How bad must it be when the furthest left members of Congress cannot endorse the former further leftist, most left voting senator in the U.S. Congress? It doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris was rated to be the furthest left when she was a senator for that very short time. Barack Obama-esque. And Rashida Tlaib, a member of the squad, doesn't want a piece of that. There are significant electoral implications with Michigan, part of the Democrats' quote-unquote blue wall must-win states. And Rashida Tlaib doesn't want to get behind it. Pretty incredible. They don't want to be a part of that. And you've got to imagine that the places that have significant Muslim populations, they're looking over and going, oh man, these people don't represent what we're into. So this broad question is like, how does all this stuff go down? How come you always get lied about? Donald Trump and Joe Rogan had that conversation. I just found this clip. I've had this sitting around for a little while, and I didn't know when it was going to work in, but this is basically it. We're talking about a culture of lies where people just lose their minds, and then they exaggerate and they say things that are false. Why is that? Donald Trump doesn't necessarily get it, although I think he probably does at some level. I think that Joe Rogan says it really well. It's also really funny. This is a very human thing. You can't see the fakes like Barack Obama talking about Jeeves. You can't see the fakes like Tim Walz, who pretends to be a guy who knows how to shoot but doesn't even know how to load his own shotgun. Kamala Harris, who acts like she's somehow like some sort of racial justice fighter, but she can't even talk about whether or not she wants to eliminate crime in her own state. She can't even go on record with it. And then you got all the false claims. But he wants to line up Liz Cheney in front of a firing squad. There's plenty of people who wouldn't object to that, by the way. She seems awful. She is the daughter of Dick Cheney. But here's Joe Rogan making sense of the madness for a little bit here. And Donald Trump being a regular dude, just responding like a regular person might.
So I always got more publicity than other people. And it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe. Maybe
he said a lot of wild shit, and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild shit, made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this bullshit, pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. Yeah. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult to know. You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it. One of the beautiful things about you is that you freeball. Like, you get out and you do these huge events and you're just talking and you're making. We've highlighted you on the show many times when you did this Biden impression where he's walking around, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's funny. It's stand up. It's funny stuff. But it's like and you were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have like comedic instincts. Like when you said to Hillary, you'd be in jail. Like that's great timing. Yeah. But it's like that kind of stuff was unheard of as a politician. Like no one had done that.
That's exactly it, folks. It's just, again, all the people that know him up close, they love him. The people that get upset about it is like, I almost always get like less mad about what Donald Trump does and more mad about the people that are his surrogates. Left to his own devices, he says things imperfectly. He says things inartfully all the time. He says things that give opportunities for the other side to pounce on it. But like even that doesn't bother me. It's more like the people on the right that are just like worshiping. That's the bad part. That clip is very real though. It's like, hey man, I don't know. I just say stuff and people get wild. And Joe Rogan breaks it down and he was like, maybe. Like, that's right. How about this stuff? The stuff that should actually matter is not being covered in the same way. Disaster. This is an October surprise. This is a real October surprise. Final jobs report before the election shows just 12,000 jobs added in October. That is a horrific number. It is less than 10% of what was expected. The economists were predicting there would be 100,000 new jobs. This is as low as the fewest number of jobs that were added in December of 2020. That was top of the end of pandemic. And if you guys are thinking about going somewhere, we got more to cover down because there's some other things here that we should not walk away from while we're talking about this culture of death. And I'm not gonna just quite drop off yet. I put too many things to go for 1 hour, so be it. They wrote within the professional services, employment and temporary services declined by 49,000. They lost jobs in that. Temporary health services decreased by 577,000, reaching a peak in March 2022. Manufacturing employment decreased in October by 46,000 jobs. A lot of people lost jobs. The offset was that a bunch of people lost employment. That is a terrible way to go into an election. If you're campaigning on, and the number one thing is the economy, again, as usual. The places where employment ticked up was healthcare, where the government is heavily involved, and government, where the government actually makes up jobs. What an awful thing for you to do to campaign on. And meanwhile, the only way that they can do this is what they call, they want to go ahead and enable more voters, including people that are illegal. And you're seeing this coming from Fox News. The Supreme Court sided with the GOP in a last-minute mail-in ballot dispute. The issue is they wanted undated ballots to be able to continue to be counted. In other words, they wanted more people to be able to have their say whether or not those were following the law. Because in a lawless society, in the culture of death, the law is not important. The spirit of the law and the meaning of the law are not important. It's just winning. It's just raw power exercise. And that's what we keep seeing over and over again. And they're willing to use things in their favor when it's favorable, and they'll fight against it when it should be better, when it should be serving the people, and it's not. Let me give you this little taste. This came out the other day. This is actually shocking to me. This is some body cam footage showing Jordan Neely. You remember him? He's the guy that died on the ground when Daniel Penny choked him out. This is yet another experience of lawlessness in this country. And more importantly, it shows you what's going on in New York. The same state that was willing to send somebody in to kill off a squirrel and a freaking raccoon that somebody was raising on a 350-acre animal shelter. That state also is prosecuting a man who choked out a dude that was threatening to kill people and was high on drugs. And most likely, from everything I can see from the just the court transcripts that are coming out, most likely died because of drugs, not because of what happened. And how do we know that? Because when the cops showed up on scene, the body cam footage shows that Jordan Neely had a pulse and he was breathing. And if you've ever worked in emergency medicine, that is the time when you begin doing compressions. If your heart rate is below 30 beats a minute, compressions are required under ACLS. It's been a little while since I've done advanced cardiac life support and done that training, but I'm fairly confident that if you have a very slow and weak pulse, compressions are the move. And I think it's at 30. I think that's the threshold. You guys can fact check me if you're a nurse or something like that. By all means, this needs to be shared broadly. And Daniel Penny should be a free man. Not because of this being not that his choking could not have been a proximate cause, but if the guy was there and the NYPD failed to render aid, that's another failure of the state. They allowed this man to die in front of them. And should they be held responsible? Not necessarily. But there is a standard of care, and it's really not that hard to do CPR compressions. If you're a cop, you should be trained in this stuff.
Here you go. Oops. You got a pulse? You got a pulse or no? I feel a pulse. You feel a pulse? Keep breathing, right? Try it on the wrist. Try it on the wrist. This one? You got a pulse. You got a pulse. Keep breathing. I feel a pulse. You got a pulse. You got a pulse. Oh, man. He put him on a pulse. Stay with me. He's breathing. Relax. Get on the train. How about you?
All right, there's multiple minutes of this. If you guys want, I'll throw it up on the locals channel so you can see that as well if you want to take a look. It's worth seeing. And officers testified this as much. The guy was alive when they got there. That means he wasn't killed by the choking. He may have been, that could be a proximal cause eventually, but he was alive when officers were on scene, which means he probably could have been resuscitated. Maybe he would be brain damaged, probably not. If you're breathing and you have a pulse, you may be in bad shape, but it turns out that drugs have a lot to do with what goes on, and they regulate things in a much more nasty way than some guy giving you either an air or a blood choke, both of which are things you can generally recover from, for whatever that's worth. All right, I want to tuck back into this culture of death thing. Again, they're willing to go after men who are preserving life. And then they also want to try to get men to get involved in promoting abortion, killing off their own young. This is the ugliest part of all of it for me. This is an actual ad being run by Kamala Harris's campaign. It's the stupidest thing. Speaking of emergency medicine and the way that you deal and render aid, not once have I ever heard, and not once have any of you ever heard, of a dispatcher or a paramedic or even a doctor on the phone yelling, "John, she needs an abortion." This is the stupidest, craziest thing. You have to be so low information. And maybe people who are paying attention for the damn squirrel at this point can see how stupid this is. My hope is that it shocks their consciousness, that the government wants death. And it is a mindless killing machine, as quoted by Elon Musk earlier. Here we go.
Dr. Davis, what do I do?
John, she needs an abortion, or she's going to die from the pregnancy.
Sorry, that's not happening. What are you doing? Who are you? I'm your Republican congressman. Now that we're in charge, we banned abortion. No exceptions. You can't do this. She's dying. I won the last election, so it's my decision. But don't worry, you can still have children, just not with her.
Save her life. Vote November 5th. Paid for by the Progress Action Fund, not authorized by any candidate, but clearly this is a Kamala Harris. This is the stupidest thing that I cannot believe that they think this pays, that it moves things forward for them. Meanwhile, you've got these weirdos out there in the world. I've been holding on to this clip for a very long time too. If you're missing the view, this is the weirdest looking person you've ever seen wearing like Kiss makeup, wearing some sort of BDSM outfit with nipples taped off. Looks like maybe had a gender surgery. I don't know what gender this person is. I don't even know what species this person is, but letting you know that conservatives are the ones in the cult. You'll notice that conservatives are not the ones that are out there trying to kill babies and leaving these bizarre ads showing that women need an abortion to save their lives. Kill a baby to save their lives. Sure.
There's something weird about conservatives.
There is almost a cultish vibe, I feel. The way they operate within themselves, they refuse to listen to outside people, they're refusing to learn, essentially. I think that is a large part of it.
Yeah, the large part of it is that when you're in a cult and you need to project like that, you become absolutely absurdly, ridiculously weird. It's so sad, and it's so gross. I got a little bit more I want to cover if that's all right. So we're going to keep on going here. We're going to keep pressing on. Again, they just can't be consistent about the idea of abortion. And the fact of the matter is you can run any kind of campaign you want and you can talk about it all you like. But when you go out and actually talk about with human beings, not some focus group or some advertising agency that's selling you an ad, When you talk to real people, they can't figure out how to mentally get consistent. I think this is one of the most telling clips that I've ever seen. This works for everybody. These questions are applicable to any person's sensibilities, and it's always the same right up until the got you of now apply it in the alternate. How on earth do you hold these conflicting ideas in your head? The culture of death encourages you to shift away and ignore that cognitive dissonance that says life is life. If you take them in the right order, they will walk themselves there and realize, uh-oh, it doesn't work.
If a pregnant woman is murdered, do you think it's just for a judge to charge the criminal with 2 murders, one for the woman and the other for the baby in her womb?
I absolutely do.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes. If the boyfriend of a woman and father of the child doesn't want to raise a baby, does he have the right to kill that baby if the baby's unwanted?
Absolutely not.
No, he don't.
He does not have a right to kill a baby. No.
If someone slips a pregnant woman an abortion pill that causes her to miscarry and she doesn't know it's an abortion pill, do you think that person should be charged?
Yes.
What do you think they should be charged with?
Murder. First-degree murder.
Murder. So it's homicide in these cases if it's the man that's causing it, but not if the woman that's causing it.
In her case, she knows that she wanted it and she took the pill to do it. So
If that person's being killed, do you think it matters to him or her who's doing the killing, or are they being murdered regardless?
they're being murdered regardless. So yeah.
So do you think it's a homicide in both cases?
Whoever the killer is should get it.
That's what a cult looks like. That's why it's projection. When you can't rationalize the crazy thing that you say because you've been caught in your own cognitive biases that do not line with the reality of the ground. Look at the way that they behave in real life. Nobody wants that in real life. Nobody thinks it's okay for a man to go and kill off a baby because they don't want to raise it. Why would a woman be able to? It immediately gets crazy. And that reminds me of things that Ronald Reagan said, which is that it's not that they don't know anything. It's that the things that they know are not true. I'm paraphrasing. That's a culture of death. That's when you've been lied to. That's when the up is down and the down is up, left and right are swapped, when reality is not going to stop you from the things that you know are true, when you're going to not believe your lying eyes. We had another clip the other day that said people, they shouldn't believe their bank account. Right? That was the Jesse Waters clip that we played at the end of last week. Don't believe your bank account. Don't believe your lying eyes. Reality is not your reality. You should listen to the marketing. How silly and how pathetic. But all of this stuff reminds me of the fascism push they've done. Again, we brought up Ronald Reagan a couple of times. Someone in California who showed that you can also lead the nation that way. Kamala Harris is aspiring to do the opposite, I think. Here he is talking about fascism, where he actually defines the term, because Ronald Reagan knew what fascism is. For some reason, people on the political left do not. I got into a social media thing. I don't normally do it on weekends, but I did. And this guy said, I'm voting for Democrats because I want to stop fascism. And I said, just define fascism for me. They never can do it because they have no idea what it means. Reagan did, and he mentioned it was going to be coming in the form of liberalism/leftism. And here it is. This is an old clip, but it's still relevant.
How do we call a liberal? Someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism. And what is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy? The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
It's very simple. Government is a heartless, mindless killing machine that will kill you because it doesn't actually care about the human outcomes, especially when it no longer serves the people. That's it. And fascism is the government running the private organizations and pushing it down on them. Speaking of pushing it down on them and getting to work, I don't know why I thought this clip was funny, but some people just don't understand phrasing. Dub Imhoff is one of those people who's probably never been around like regular dudes. You cannot say this about a woman who's alleged to have started her political career by hooking up with, let's just say this very politely and not indecently, whose political career was started by, she got up by getting under Willie Brown, right? Here we go.
Kamala did what Kamala always does. She just put her head down and she went to work.
Gross. One more.
Kamala did what Kamala always does. She just put her head down and she went to work.
Yeah, we know. Oh, man. Why are we doing that? Why is it like that? Okay. What is the other things that she's been pushing out there? The reason why, by the way, why all of the horrific job reports are coming out, why the economy is not noticeably better, why they may be getting more money in the market, but it's basically just keeping track with inflation at this point. That's the best that they can do, is basically keep pace. It's because they have really bad business tactics. They don't understand it. It turned out that some people actually did understand it, which is that when the government is not involved, something that doesn't make a profit is not involved. When all of your job growth doesn't come from the government sector, it comes from real sectors that actually generate revenue. The government creates nothing. All it does is suck at people. Reagan knew that too. Here's the difference between two people, California politicians, how the times have changed as we've embraced this culture of debt.
Today, they're taking almost half of every dollar earned in the United States. And most people don't realize it because the taxes are hidden in the so-called business taxes. You know, the politician that stands up and yells, oh, let's save the little man, let's tax business, and everybody yells hooray. But they haven't figured out that every tax on business is just a part of the cost of production. And the customer winds up paying it when he buys the product. It's a hidden sales tax. There's 116 of them in the suit of clothes that each one of us is wearing.
We're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. That's just it. It's about paying their fair share. I am not mad at anyone for achieving success, but everyone should pay their fair share, and it is not right.
Yeah, it's not right, because I just don't understand that if I make that companies pay that money, that's just to pass on tax. In the same way that their argument against tariffs. Yeah, tariffs get passed on to the companies that sell them, which is why they're incentivized to onshore jobs and onshore their work and onshore their product manufacturing. That's the whole point of it. The point of it is that costs of any kind in the supply chain get passed on to the consumer. When we have people like this that are supposed to be running the quote unquote economy, it's not surprising they don't get it. And speaking of the economy, it screwed women, which should be the biggest thing. This is where I'm going to end today. I know you guys, we've gone a little bit long. This is where I want to end. This is the final argument in the culture of death, which is to say that abortion is necessary. You have to kill off your babies in order to what? Like have your own life. And then what? It ends. It is a genetic dead end without babies. I'm talking on aggregate here. I'm not specifically addressing any one of you, obviously. But listen to this woman lamenting something. We gave up such an important opportunity for women to be able to raise children at home. And I think women now, particularly women that are like my age and younger, some of them have opened their eyes up and been like, we got screwed. We absolutely got screwed. We got taken in, and I don't blame them. My own wife and I constantly are talking about this, that she basically narrowly avoided the trap that was laid for her by the generation before. The Gloria Steinem types, who were basically in the age bracket of my mother-in-law and the women around that time period. Women that are now between like 60 and 80 laid this trap with this feminist idea that you should have everything a man can have, but you can't, not all at once. And certainly you can't have a family life in the same way as also being a corporate executive, because you're going to have to only do it by subjugating other women. You're going to have women raise your children. Someone else is going to have to do the work of motherhood. And you miss out on that, which is an incredible gift for anybody who's ever seen it. And it's totally challenging, and it's absolutely exhausting. It's so much work. And yet, it's what women are most suited to be able to do in a way that men cannot. And so the only way that women can go and be that high-powered corporate executive or some top lawyer or a politician is that they can either not have children, or they can outsource children to some other woman and subjugate them so that they can have their dream. Either way, it's still an elitist thing. And either way, the only people that lose are the children, which is why these people love abortion. They do not value children. They do not value human life. They come from a culture of death. Here's one woman acknowledging it. This is coming from a swing state debate, and this is from the Free Press.
I would love to be a stay-at-home mom. I would love to be a homemaker and a wife. I would love to be able to live on a homestead and go milk my cow and take the eggs out of the chicken coop and have one baby in the belly and on my hip and another toddler coming behind me. That's like my dream, but I can't fucking do that because the way the economy is set up is I'm forced to work. I'm forced to get an education, a higher education, a college degree in order to make enough money that I can be financially independent and afford my own home or my own rent or my own gas gas or my own groceries, my own insurance. And it's extremely difficult to do that. And it's very isolating as a woman when you have to do all of that all on your own, and you can't find somebody that you can outsource some of those chores and financial responsibilities like you would with a spouse. So no, being a single working woman absolutely sucks. It's the worst thing ever. I hate it. I would go back to the 1950s in a second just so I wouldn't have to deal with this shit.
You're talking about a traditional nuclear family where the woman doesn't work in a married household with kids.
And statistically, that was the case.
You're a single woman who isn't married with kids yet.
So I'm for because of the way it is. Most women were married by the age of 21 up until the 1970s.
I think it's a woman's choice. Before that, it was societally encouraged to marry young.
Yeah, and it was better for women mental health-wise long-term to be able to go into that long-term committed relationship and have the established family instead of being forced to slave away for a corporation that doesn't like you, doesn't care about you, makes you sit under fluorescent lights for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. You get a lunch break, you get health insurance, but do you have somebody who loves you staring at you every day like your child? No, it's horrible.
Here's a woman that went viral with a tweet that has 3.2 million views right now. She said, the dating process is actually making me incredibly sad. I'm 24 and I still want to be on the path of dating someone for 2 to 3 years, being engaged for a year, married and having a lot of kids. The apps are horrible. The matches either speak to me like I'm a piece of meat or the conversation is so boring that I have no interest in actually meeting them. I've been on 16 first dates since my last relationship and they have all been bad dates. Guys in person don't seem confident enough to approach me. The entire thing has me in tears at the moment. This is exactly why. Because what we've tried to do is make women act like men, and that is not good for women, as this woman very accurately articulated, because that's the only way that you can survive in an economy that sucks. The whole point was you were never supposed to be able to have to make it on your own. By the way, it's miserable for men to be on their own. They lack purpose. They lack guidance. Men who don't have women in their lives also are always yearning for something. There are very few of them that you look at and think, aha, they've got it all figured out and they don't need women. We need each other. That's why we were created man and woman. This is biblical stuff, and it's so simple. I do disagree with this woman saying that she needs to be dating for someone for 2 to 3 years, even though I had a similar experience. My only experience was I was in the military at the time, and it wasn't safe to be able to do that. I wasn't in the same place. But I would say this, if you understand how to date, and I'm going to be covering this on a future program, it's very important. If you understand how to date, which I did not know, but being married to someone with a master's degree in counseling who has dealt with marriage and family therapy training and then looks at it from a conservative perspective, which is lacking in the mental health fields, it's very obvious to us that if you actually have your values aligned, it's like any other mission that could ever exist in the world, whether it be in your financial world, whether it be in your career, whether it be in your military. You have to align what is the goal. What are the parameters for success in achieving said goal? And then how do you work backwards and make that happen? You have to have similar values. You have to see the future the same way. This is the short version of it. And you have to understand that your dating is for a purpose. So the idea that she's doing 16 first dates is actually really successful. Why waste anyone's time if the goal is not going to be the final result, which should be marriage? That's what conservatives believe. The culture of death would have you believe something else. I was never concerned about the idea of wanting to be married at some point. The question was, how do I evaluate it? And I never knew. I accidentally Forrest Gumped my way into a successful marriage that's now 11 years deep. But it's only by luck. And I would say the Holy Spirit, the way that God guides you in the world, that you bring yourself to a partner that it does that. But not all of us have been trained to see that. I don't remember ever being trained in that. And I think that my parents' generation missed that opportunity. Having societal pressure on you to be married younger is really important for both parties. It makes men pick up a burden and grow up in a way that we don't otherwise naturally do on our own. I was 27, unmarried, and joined the military like a child, like an 18-year-old. So I understand this from a man's perspective. I also know that women need to be protected and they need men that know how to do it. And sometimes we learn together and sometimes you find someone slightly older. That's the case for my parents. This used to be knowledge that was out there, and we've lost it, and we've lost so much. All right. I will give you a palate cleanse. The palate cleanse is sometimes your friends need to tell you too that you're dating the wrong girl. I don't know why I found this funny, but like this is the kind of friends that I would have. And if you were trying to engage yourself to the wrong person, if your friends and your family don't like your potential spouse, you're probably on the wrong track. That's the other piece of it. We actually had a lot more societal understanding that you don't just roll off into the world, pick somebody that doesn't have aligned values. If your people that love you the most don't love the person that you're marrying, you might want to take a second chance. Here's just a short little version of it. Dude, what are you doing? By the way, even the posture of these two people make me not want them to get married too, just looking at them.
News, Tiffany's no longer my girlfriend.
Thank God, dude. That woman was the craziest person I've ever met in my life.
Oh, hold up. We're engaged now. She's my fiance. She's no longer my girlfriend. She's my fiance.
What the hell, Mike? I am so sorry that she's your fiance. Bye. Oh my!
I am so sorry that she's his fiance too. Do you notice she's got her arm over the top of him in this like weird sort of like superior position? It looks disordered just from the outside. And this may be staged. It doesn't really matter. All of that shows me something that is not good. That is not a healthy relationship. Dr. Kyle will go ahead and just veto that one for you guys. All right. Really want to appreciate my friends over at Catholic Vote. Thanks so much to them for supporting and sponsoring our program. You guys can get the Loop, which had a lot of great news in it, including one of our stories about the jobs report. That's where it came from today. Today's Loop can be found at catholicvote.org/loop. You can sign up for it at catholicvote.org on the main page. Put your email address in there. Make sure you sign up with your zip code, and they will get you motivated by giving you great information, things about faith, family, and freedom, the opposite of the culture of death. That is my friends over at Catholic Vote. You can follow them on social media for a lot of pro-life messages. If you want to see that, catholicvote.org. It's at Catholic Vote on social media places, wherever you're going to see it. Follow them on, make sure you're following them on YouTube. If you're watching us over on YouTube, make sure you're listening over there. If you're not following us, then you can check it out there on their Rumble page. You can also find it on X where we stream. All these things are good stuff, and you're going to find more and more aligned values. People that are following them tend to follow the same kind of things. It's what I'm all about. We have a complete alignment when it comes to things, and they're also 100% in for Donald Trump. So they've endorsed Donald Trump. You guys will see that as well. They spent money to try to get him elected. That's what I got for today. Here's a 5-star review. We appreciate you guys doing this. This is coming from our episode 378, one that was entitled Veritas, meaning truth. This is Pegasa Fun 1 saying, I hate that you and Bongino fell out, but as much as I respect him, you're the one who's right. Great show today. Well, it's not about that in a lot of the ways, but I appreciate the sentiment. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes people change their principles. We've been completely on the same page since day one. Anybody who's listened to this program knows we've not wavered and we've never backed off. That's what we're going to keep doing here. Don't be surprised. As this show continues to evolve and change and grow, it will continue to have the same principles and guiding light. Here is our last, I gave you the palate cleanse, so we'll just say thanks so much for joining us. I hope you guys appreciate that we went a little bit long, but there was so much I wanted to cover down on. This culture of death is pervasive. And a dead squirrel or children or women who didn't make it because we had illegal aliens, all of these come from the same place, which is lying. Make sure you're getting yourself and you have a plan to go out and vote. If you have not, I will be voting tomorrow on Election Day. My wife already early voted. Hang in there, folks. It's going to get bumpy, but we'll do it together. See you tomorrow. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.